Mohit Aron has built $2 billion companies, and yet the well-known and well-regarded serial entrepreneur and investor of the Silicon Valley keeps a very low profile. He is called the father of hyperconvergence. Basically, he figured out how to make data centers run faster by keeping compute and storage close together instead of relying on slow networks. Meaning, why send your data across town when you can keep it in the same room? That insight became Nutanix, now a $20 billion company. Then he did it again with Cohesity, this time tracking the messy world of backup data, turning it into a platform that could predict ransomware attacks and power AI. Now he's onto his third startup, called Siphon, still in stealth mode and to be launched soon. But today, we are not just talking about his wins. Mohit has sharp takes on the AI hype cycle in Silicon Valley, circular funding deals, inflated valuations, and why India still isn't producing original AI innovation despite all the talent. Sitting in his new office in San Jose on a Sunday afternoon, which is, by the way, overlooking the Nutanix campus, Mohit also gets candid about immigration, government accountability, and he feels very strongly that personal interest should be tied with national interest to have a long-term sustainable impact. Listen on. This is the latest episode of ET in the Valley. It's Wednesday, December 3rd, and I am Surabhi Agarwal. So tell me a little bit about yourself, Mohit. I believe you're from Pathankot.
I was born in Pathankot, but I never lived in Pathankot.
Oh.
Chandigarh is more
Chandigarh.
where I identify with. So I graduated with a bachelor's in computer science from IIT Delhi in 1995. And I came to the US right after. So I landed in Houston, where I did my master's and PhD from Rice University. So that was done by the end of 2000. And then I came to the Valley in December 2000. And I joined a very young startup called Zambil. In 2 years, it was pretty clear that this company is going to be a victim of the internet bust.
Oh, okay.
But Google had been pursuing me for a while, including when I took the offer from Zambil. So I went back and looked at Google, and I was very impressed at what they were doing.
That time Google was a startup, right?
It was a startup. I was just sort of the 600th employee. And so I interviewed with them end of 2002, and I joined them at the beginning of 2003. So I stayed at Google for nearly 5 years. That's where a lot of the goodness that Google came up with happened. I was part of what was called the Google file system team, which was probably the first web scale file system that was built for the world. And so I learned a lot of smart people, especially given the environment where many companies were failing. And so Google was able to attract the best of the best. I left Google in 2007 because when I graduated with the PhD, my motivation was always to do innovative stuff.
So what's the backstory and how did you get to start Nutanix?
Yeah, so the motivation always was to do innovative stuff and to come up with innovation on my own. And so once I realized that I would be able to do a company in Aster, the company I was in before, I got exposure to a whole variety of stuff. And the idea itself for Nutanix came from some of my observations at Google itself. I worked on a team called the Google File System, which was basically bringing the world of storage into a web scale place like Google. Now they built it for scaling, in a big way, but they initially used it like any other storage vendor was getting used. So even in Google, they had a crude way to bring the compute and the storage together and get the network out of the way. And that phenomena, which later came to be realized as hyperconvergence, is what I brought formally out into the world through Nutanix. The challenge was, how do you bring the compute and storage together and yet keep them separate? And the idea, the big realization we had was to do that through virtualization. So that's the tech behind it.
You call it the father of hyperconvergence.
Yeah, that's the reason. People call me the father of hyperconvergence because I'm attributed, I'm credited to be the brains behind it all. But, we stand on the shoulders of giants. And So you actually connect the dots.
But explain me, how is that the concept of hyperconvergence relevant in today's time?
When I came to the industry in 2000, the network that was coming to my laptop was a gigabit. And 25 years later, the network that comes to my desk is a gigabit. So the network speeds have really not increased. And you can argue maybe in the data centers, you may have gotten a 10 gig Ethernet that is more or less commoditized. So, okay, fine, factor of 10. But compute speeds and disk speeds have increased tremendously. So that was really the observation. That was the trend that we capitalized on. We noticed that if you connect compute and storage with networking and rely on networking, very soon you're going to be bottlenecked by networking. And so even to this day, the better thing to do is to actually run your compute close to where the storage is, where the data is, and not away from it. And so that was what Nutanix did, and it's still relevant even to this day. And that's a $20 billion company today. So that whole concept that try to avoid networking, don't over rely on networking, because even the WAN speeds are tough. Earlier, we used to say that the whole world is moving to the cloud, but that's really not the case. I think the cloud has a place and on-prem data centers have a place. And that's again because the network speeds have not improved. The cost has not gone down significantly. And so when the data is on-prem, people tend to keep it on-prem and do more compute there. And the data is in the cloud, they do their compute in the cloud. So even the notion of hyperconvergence has far-reaching consequences. And so that was Nutanix.
So what happened next?
I left Nutanix in 2013 to form my next company, Cohesity. And there, if you roughly look at the world of data as an iceberg, the tip of the iceberg, the part above the surface of water, but there was a big part below the surface of water, which we called secondary data. This is the second touch of data, right? The first touch of data happens in production. The second touch of data happens after the data has been touched in production. So for example, backups, archival, test and development, a lot of what you do on files. So all this was like a big jumbled mess that my company Cohesity then put on one platform. Initially, we called it hyperconverged secondary storage.
Right.
But later it came to be called with a different name called data management. So the whole innovation we brought was that on one platform, you can actually do more. Not only can that platform take your backups, but it can perhaps also scan those backups and for ransomware attacks. It can also bring AI to that. AI is useless unless you give it data. And backups are a great place where all the data sits. And my company, Cohesity, they rolled out the product called Gaia that actually was spearheaded by me when I was there. And so that became this thing, exactly.
Just about when ChatGPT was getting launched or something.
Yeah, right after that. So we all got inspired by what the technology ChatGPT could do. And so the same technology was used. So the whole LLMs and stuff were used. And then, in 2024, early 2024, I came out of Cohesity. I'm still, by the way, attached there. But I had been there for 10 plus years.
Is this Cohesity's office?
No. This is my new company, Siphon's office. Okay. Yeah, this is my third startup. And so I started that, mid 2024. It's kind of in stealth. Hopefully we'll launch sometime next year.
So talk to us about it.
Yeah, so the motivation comes from my own time as the CEO of Cohesity. I found that the state of general sales technology was very bad. Very little predictability in where sales is going. And the only way to get some of that predictability is if you do meetings after meetings and inspections after inspections, it becomes very inefficient. Everyone is basically trying to build a lot of custom tools because the state of what you get out there in the market is so bad. There's no predictability from like, how's your pipeline doing, right? How's your forecasting doing? How's your win-loss rates? Is marketing generating enough pipeline? How's your sales productivity? All these questions are really not answered. And so when I was thinking of, the next company to do, like that needs to become a company, right? A lot of the world will benefit from that. So that's kind of what I'm doing.
Very interesting. You've been in the Valley for many, many years now. I'm sure you've seen many cycles of boom and bust, right? Up with the dot-com boom.
The dot-com was the big one.
Boom and bust.
Cloud, and the 2008 one, yes.
Yeah. So from your lens, what is happening right now in the Valley with pertaining to AI? How do you look at it?
So first I'll say that, look, to do a successful company, the basics have not changed. What has changed is, if you roughly think of it as a war, the ammunition that you have is new and different, right? Old times when they used to fight wars, people used to have forces. At some time, they got fighter planes and tanks. It's the same in doing companies. So the AI is the new ammo that you have to build companies. Now, don't get me wrong. First of all, on one hand, AI brings a lot of potential, because the way I look at AI is, earlier, a programmer would write a program and then it will produce an outcome. In the world of AI, we first look at the outcome, and now whatever you've programmed can produce similar outcomes. Now, that said, there is also an overhype in terms of the amount of money being put in this and the valuations that companies are getting just because they're doing AI. So I have a little bit of a mixed view. It is a time that I have not seen earlier. I thought the boom time was crazy and some of the stuff in the middle was crazy, but right now it's very, very crazy. People are basically on nothing. They're raising money at huge valuations. And many of this stuff is probably going to go bust. And so VCs are going to lose a whole lot of money at some point. But not right now. Maybe this will continue for a couple of years and then we'll see.
When you say what concerns is the money that is sort of flowing in the valley right now, is it put into the large deals that say players like OpenAI, AMD, NVIDIA, Oracle, Intel, we saw funding from the government as well? To me, they look like circular deals.
They are circular. So somebody gives someone a huge valuation, then that someone invests in somebody else, and then that somebody else puts money back. So there is a cycle also going on. But as part of the cycle, let's say the cycle is going on and some company here got valued immensely large. Now their competitor would then get a commensurate valuation, right? Even though they are not part of the cycle. Just because they are valued highly, these guys get highly valued. Now these guys get highly valued when we've all seen the valuations of OpenAI and Anthropic and whatnot. But then every VC is like, oh, I don't want to be left out. So they'll find some AI company and give that a huge valuation. Maybe not as large as some of these companies, but definitely way larger than what we've seen before. So that sort of stuff is definitely happening, right? It's almost infectious.
Right. So what would be your advice to break out of this cycle?
Yeah, my advice to people would be that, again, go back to the fundamentals. Fund companies that are solving the real problem and give them valuations that are commensurate with what the companies are making. Don't give them valuations on the expectations that they'll do well. You're already baking in something that the company might do years from today. That, I think, is a little bit irresponsible because it sort of muddies up the whole pond. And it forces other VCs. So what's going to happen is that if one VC is giving a huge valuation, the other VC who wants to give a reasonable valuation is unable to because they will lose the deal. So they have to give a large valuation. So I think investors need to come together and bring out the hype a little bit and bring it back to the norms.
How do you look at India's AI ecosystem versus what do you see in the valley? Despite the crazy valuation, despite the froth and the concerns of the .com kind of bust, still a lot of innovation is concentrated in San Francisco, Silicon Valley especially, right? And a lot of funding is also, investment is also concentrated. And with that view, how do you look at the context?
Yeah, so look, from a industry point of view, I don't hear much in terms of innovation coming out of India from an AI perspective. And that just could be that I'm just not hearing. But I think usually when there is some cool stuff coming out, then you do get to hear it. So far, we have not yet heard original innovation in AI coming out of India. I'm sure there are a lot of people following suit on whatever they see the Silicon Valley doing, and they're doing something similar. That I don't doubt that. But fundamental innovation in AI is something that I have yet to see.
But when it comes to creating IP, creating product, we are still, very, very, not there.
Right.
So what is it that, because you've lived here in the valley, you've done 2 very large companies. This is your 3rd startup. What is it that you...
Yeah, so I would say fundamental innovation comes from 2 places. Either it comes from research, academia and stuff, or it comes from phenomenal companies like, the whole AI kind of came from Google, right? OpenAI was not the innovator. They actually took what Google had produced, the transformer architecture and stuff. So what I'm trying to say is that India needs to have such an ecosystem. I think by and large, the bigger companies in India tend to be more of the e-commerce variety, of the Swiggies and Zomatos, but they're not fundamental technical powerhouses where lots of innovation is being done.
True.
Academia is even sort of worse. I'm from IT Delhi. And the professors don't even have money sometimes to travel and present in premier conferences in the world. So research is not the cutting edge, I would say, right? So the government has to make conditions such that either the research and the industry both thrive in terms of technical innovation. And very importantly, they also work together. That's where, by the way, China is doing very well. China, there's a lot of collaboration between their academics and their industry, even more than US. So even US suffers a little bit from that. But at least US has independently very strong academics and industry. But India has yet to get there. Now, I see there's a lot of will in the government, but so far, I'm just not seeing how that will is materializing into big companies that are technical powerhouses and these premier institutes like the IITs becoming research hubs. That's yet to happen.
But tell me, what will it take to change this?
Well, often what it does, it's actually the will, first of all. And, you put some sort of a person accountable on top of all this, and they design a system. And so this body that they put up with one accountable owner should look at all the premier institutes, look at what needs to be changed. Again, more of the same will not work. If you're trying to massage and fine tune what's already there and expect that will significantly change, it's the same as try to fine tune what's in Bangalore and try to fix the traffic system. It's not going to work. You have to, rethink from scratch on how you can improve this. Something similar is needed. But people sometimes think that, oh my God, that's too tough. Actually, it's not. You just need the work. That's where I started with. You need the work to do it. And once that happens, things fall in place.
I see so many sort of Indian origin founders like yourself. You also give back to the ecosystem by funding, investing in other companies and mentoring. Because I know that the Indian government, says that very often, especially in direct conversations with me, where they say that we want, some of the Indian origin founders to some way engage and mentor the ecosystem in India, back in India, where, they invest. And how can we enable that?
Same thing. I think whoever is accountable to improve the ecosystem, think of ways in which Indian founders who already know what they're doing can help. I think we've all growing up heard a saying, think not what India can do for you, think what you can do for India. Let me say very controversially, it's bullshit. You have to align the national interest with the personal interest. That's the way I look at it. If the personal interest is misaligned with national interest, and you're asking the person to do something, forget your personal interest, do something for the national interest, then maybe 5 people will do it, but hundreds of thousands will not do it. Right? So basically, but if you align what is in the national interest to what is in the personal interest, then hundreds of thousands will do it. And that's what you want. And then national interest will benefit and personal interest will benefit. And when you align the two, that's when magic happens. This whole notion that, in various sections of India is very corrupt. So that's what Indian government needs to realize. Please align the personal interest to the national interest. If the national interest is to be not corrupt, somehow you need to align personal interest with that. And so maybe make the penalties bigger so that it's not in the personal interest to be corrupt, or make the incentives simpler. Without doing that, if you just keep saying that, think not what India can do for you, think what you can do, then you get what you have.
I also want to touch upon a little bit about this immigration debate which has happened. I've seen this rhetoric going on for many, many years, and in my 20 years of journalism, but never has it been this crazy where, overnight this kind of panic was created and the changes that have been made to the H-1B system. What do you get here?
Well, let me first start by saying the H-1B system was broken. And I'm glad that somebody is recognizing that it needs to be fixed. Now, the next question, of course, is how. I do think that imposing a $100,000 fee is problematic. Imagine 2 kinds of people that I may want to hire as an H-1B. One is a highly skilled person who has made a name for himself or herself. Now that person, I want to spend the extra $100,000 to get them. But please understand that they're already probably well established in their life. right? Wherever they are, they're kept happy with their company, they're highly skilled, and their life is already like, they probably don't want to move, right, to a different country or what have you. So the kind of people who are highly skilled and still wanting an H-1B is probably less. On the other hand, there is the more entry-level person who's highly skilled, maybe from a good university, right? They're at the early stages of their career. That is the person that is more amenable to moving. But at the start of their career, if I have to pay $100,000 extra to get them, I would probably think twice. And so you're basically, by imposing this $100,000 fee, you're eliminating that part, which is actually all the Satya Nadellas and Sundar Pichais actually came through that route. So I think I really hope they fix it differently. The purpose of the H-1B is to genuinely hire people who you otherwise will not be able to hire in America, in the US. And so for those people, whatever processes the government wants to make, I fully support those. Heck, it's their country, so they should protect their own citizens first. But at the same time, they should encourage skilled people coming from outside. But like I said, the current H-1B will definitely hurt some of those prospects. But as the more clarifications come, once they fine tune, maybe it'll become better.
3 startups, 2 unicorns, and a clear-eyed view of what's broken in both Silicon Valley and India's innovation ecosystem. It's clear Mohit Aron doesn't do hype. He does real value. And maybe that's exactly the perspective we need right now. That's it for today. This episode was produced by Anirban Chaudhary and Vinay Joshi. Sound designed by Indraneel Bhattacharjee. Stay tuned for the next episode next week. Until then, keep listening.